Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS preview for the 2021 Valspar Championship. Now, before we get in the video, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. So if you're on desktop, go ahead and hover your mouse over it. You'll find timestamps that way. And on mobile, you're going to have to click and drag your finger up and down that progress bar to see what those timestamps are. But to kind of give you a little summary of what I'm going to cover in this video, I'm going to be looking at tournament fact sheets. We'll be looking at weather, just to give a little general idea of what to anticipate at this golf tournament. But then from there, we're going to be looking at what it takes to make an optimal lineup. So I kind of like to look at certain stat categories in order to do that. I like to look at recent form, course history, last year's stat, although we don't have last year's stats since it was postponed last year because of COVID, and last week's stats. And then this will give us an idea of what type of golfer to choose from. I don't necessarily like to talk about the golfers that I absolutely like in the preview video. I say that for the strategy video tomorrow. So basically, this is kind of a wide angle lens. Tomorrow will be much more specific to try to find the correct player pool to choose from. But again, you can find timestamps in the description below. Let's go ahead and get into this. So we're going to start with the tournament fact sheets. And obviously you can see Valspar Championship. We're at Innisbrook Resort, the Copperhead course in Palm Harbor, Florida. One of the biggest changes this year is this tournament is almost playing a full month. I think it is actually a full month later in the season than it typically does. This tournament usually follows the WGC Mexico Championship, which didn't happen this year. The WGC Workday Championship ended up replacing it because they canceled it in Mexico, and that obviously happened in March. So this being a month later changes a few things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that I just want to let you know that was one change that happened for this year. It's a par 71. We see a 36 on the front nine, 35 on the back nine. One thing you can't see from here, but we'll cover in the course breakdown, there are 5 par 3s at this golf course. It just replaces one of the par 4s. Traditionally, you see 4 par 3s and 4 par 5s. We do have 4 par 5s this week. Actually, let me double check on that. Let's see, 5, 5, 5, 5. Yes, we do. So one extra par 3. Again, it takes away from the par 4. It's a par 71. 7,300 yards. It's a pretty average par 71. I think that's pretty average. We see a stimp at a 12. We saw that last week, but the biggest difference between last week and this week are the greens here are a bit more undulating than they were at TPC Louisiana. Over there, they're a little bit flatter. We're going to see a bit more undulation at this course. So not quite the same, but I don't think it really matters for us choosing golfers. You're going to want to select some golfers that played in last week's tournament. I don't think they're at an advantage or a disadvantage for playing slightly different greens, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. I don't really care a lot about these course statistics. One thing I really like to look at, though, are the number of holes that water is in play, because if there is a way, I don't have those stats yet, but I'm trying to build a database with those stats, trying to figure out who finds the penalty area more than others. If you have those stats, I'd probably avoid those guys, because here at Copperhead, water is definitely in play. Again, 9 holes where water is in play. That is definitely enough. I think 4 would be my my threshold. Anything over 4, I'm probably trying to fade golfers who are a bit riskier and trying to go with a little bit more conservative play, or at least more accurate golfers. I don't care about bunkers because pros are good out of sand. There really isn't a such thing as a bad PGA Tour player out of sand. And if you hear that otherwise, it's because those guys don't know what they're talking about. When we look at turf grass, this is interesting. This is one of those things that I kind of eluded. I shouldn't say eluded. I kind of tried to set up with this late start. This is a month later. One of the things that it's going to affect is the grass overseed. Now, if you were with me last week or any of the previous videos, I talk about this quite a bit. To get out of overseed, you don't just let the grass grow through. You need to reseed it. And the fact that it says overseed means they didn't reseed it with Bermuda grass. They're obviously still overseeded, but obviously what we learned last week is the Bermuda is coming through, and it is going to affect the putts. So I had heard on Twitter that it's like a 90% Bermuda grass surface and a 10% POA. That seems a bit extreme. Like, again, grass doesn't just straight grow through. You would want to reseed with Bermuda. I think it would take a lot longer if you were just to let Bermuda try to grow through and block out the POA, or have the POA die essentially because of the heat that comes from the temperatures. But I'm not buying the 90-10. I will say this though, I am going to use Bermuda grass as my only stat for grass stats. And then in the future, when I get this database up and running, I am going to include percentages of what I think or what I've heard the grass is being. So this, to me, I think is probably more of a 70-30. I'm not there. I don't have any sources there. So this is just me. What is the word I'm looking for? Basically, this is just me trying to figure it out on my own without having any sources there. So if you do have, somebody you go to that knows more of this information than I do, take their word for it. But I would be very surprised to see anything right now greater than a 70-30 split. Like, I don't think it's 90-10, but I could be wrong. Either way, I think you're safe going with Bermuda grass. I would not look anything into POA. Course architect, Larry Packard. I don't know any Packard golf courses on tour, so I don't think it's really worth looking at. You can see some of the additional notes here. Go ahead, pause the video, read it. I have nothing to add to that. Let's go ahead and get into a weather forecast. Now, this is Monday night, and it's coming to you guys late, and I apologize for that, but I had to basically start from scratch on Monday since I had a very busy weekend. I don't really necessarily think it's that smart to be looking at a weather forecast this early. I definitely advise you guys on Wednesday night to revisit the weather to see if there's any kind of wind that's going to be picking up here. For the most part, we see Thursday through Sunday. Looks like it's going to be cloudy, some percentage of rain, not that much, and really not that much wind. Friday looks like the most wind. We see somewhere between 10 to 20. On average, it's going to be 14 miles per hour. If you do see some crazy winds that are happening at a particular time of the day, it would probably be beneficial to choose golfers in a different tee time split. So if you see wind in the morning, maybe try to select some golfers who are playing in the afternoon, and vice versa. If the wind is in the afternoon, try to play some guys that Friday in the morning. So obviously it would be Thursday PM to Friday AM, or other way around is Thursday AM to Friday PM. I don't advise using all 6 of your golfers that way. But if you had a tiebreaker between, a couple golfers, I would definitely use that. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a pretty benign week. Looks like some really hot temperatures, 80 degrees. Now, this is the temperature where Bermuda does thrive and it grows. So, again, more reason to play golfers who are good on Bermuda grass. Let's go ahead and get into a course breakdown. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So, I don't really like to read each of the holes that you see on here. What was pretty nice about this course breakdown is I kind of copied it from the PGA Tour. They had a really nice, it almost was the same format that I typically do every single week, so it wasn't difficult. I did add some of my own piece of information. I went through hole by hole, looked at kind of a course satellite, imagery to see how the hole was contoured and how the greens were also shaped. So you can see what my findings are here for off the tee shot shape and approach shot shape, go ahead, pause the video, read it. I'll scroll down a little bit. You can read kind of the back nine portion of it. Again, I'm not going to go through it, but as you can see, there are no draw holes. I know there are some dogleg lefts or whatever, but there really isn't a need to play a draw at this golf course. Now, obviously, if there are pins that are tucked over on the left side of the greens, then yeah, we would want to play draws into those greens, but usually the PGA Tour, how it sets up pin positions, pretty neutral, where on a Thursday you'll have maybe a fade pin on a hole, on a Friday you'll see a draw pin, so they will interchange them pretty evenly. I wouldn't get too caught up with a lot of stuff. The big takeaway, no real need for any shot shape, but if there is one that's more beneficial than another, it's going to be a fade, and a lot of it is because of how the greens are shaped. A lot of them kind of start from front left and go to back right. So they're more at a diagonal shape, where a fade golfer is going to have more green to work with, where they're going to be basically running parallel with how the green is shaped. A draw golfer is going to be coming in more perpendicular, meaning there's less green to work with. So that's why I have so many fades up here for approach, off the green, but off the tee. Some of these, I thought a fade would definitely benefit, because of trouble that is either lurking on the left or even on the right. So that's how I used it. I think this was a fade because there's water on the right. Yeah, I have nothing else to go with a course breakdown. So yeah, I would use more. I mean, if it's a tiebreaker situation. It's not something I heavily lean on. But another thing to keep in mind is that Paul Casey has won this tournament 2 years in a row, 2018, 2019. He hits a draw. I mean, he's a pretty straight ball, but it definitely goes right to left more than it goes left to right. But let's take a look at basically the last time we saw this tournament and all the other tournaments dating back to 2013, the results. I like to use this as kind of our target score because in our strategy video, I usually go over statement game picks. We can get a good idea of what the target score will be for that, and that makes easy points, selecting what the over-under will be. But here you can see we have an 8 under winner, Paul Casey in 2019. 2018, we see 10 under. 2017, 14 under. Now that's going to be the lowest score we see, I believe. 7, 10, 7, 10. So I think we're going to see a target score somewhere between 9 and 11 under. Well, let's say 9 and 12 under. We'll put it there. So this is more of a grinded out golf course. So you'll want golfers that avoid bogey. And you can afford not to grab golfers that make a lot of birdies, because it's all about avoiding bogeys and just putting yourself in a good spot, every single day, but just not making mistakes. And usually your bogey avoidant golfers are those that are kind of play a boring golf game and just avoid the big numbers. So I think that's what we can see here. One thing I kind of forget to do is look at what the cut is every single year. So if I scroll down, we can see the cut in 2019 was 1 over. The cut in 2018 was 3 over. 17 was even. 2016 was 3. 2015 was 1 over. So all of these are over par. So that's another thing on statement games when we go over that is what will the cut be? Depending if they do have it under par for whatever reason, make sure you hit the under on that. That's how it works on statement games. It's just like looking at a leaderboard. So anybody who's above, 3 over, that's what's considered above. And then whatever's under, obviously, is a bigger number. It's kind of opposite of how golf works, in case you guys were confused. But this also allows us to look at scoring average on certain golfers and determine, we don't need low scores here. We just need guys who make the cut. Now, that doesn't really apply when looking at the optimal lineup, which is what I like to do. But I think we could be okay with those that, hang around par a lot. I think the cut this year, It all depends on weather, but it's going to be somewhere between even and 2 over. So definitely find your par makers, your bogey avoiders, and it doesn't hurt to have some of those guys be birdie makers. Okay, let's move on. First piece of information I like to cover. We didn't do this last week because we didn't. It was DraftKings' first time doing a contest for the Zurich Classic, but we do have 2 years of salaries for the Valspar Championship. I like to put them all right here and then have kind of these summary boxes over on the left side to give you kind of an idea of average salaries we see either in the top 5, top 10, or the winner, that kind of stuff. Let's go over it right now. So again, salaries right here. I have kind of the most popular salaries we've seen inside the top 10 and top 5. So this one says top 5. This isn't so much to get you guys to choose a particular salary, but it's to give you an idea of what salaries to kind of work around. So 1 year we saw 6,800. We don't see 6,800 at all. Or I shouldn't say 6,800 at all. We don't see any salaries in the 6K range for inside the top 5. But then if we look at top 10, we do. And what this helps us do is when we look at optimal lineups here, I guarantee you we're probably going to need at least one 6K golfer in our lineups. I mean, obviously, we can see 2 that are at 6,700, 2 that are at 6,900, a 6,600 golfer that's here, 68. So, I mean, we see basically every 6K price tag up here, meaning, yeah, we probably do want to play a 6K golfer. But to give us a little bit more understanding of how comfortable we can be with these stats, we can look at this right here. So I have average salary of the winner, and this is just, minimum, maximum, all of those stats right here. 2019, 2018, that was Paul Casey, both years, right at 9,700, 9,800. Let's see what his price tag is this year. Paul Casey, 10,000. So he's just a little bit up from what we typically see. It's not a bad not a bad price tag, and I think at $10,000 he could win this 3 years in a row. I mean, it's not technically 3 years in a row, but it's 3 tournaments in a row, tournament starts in a row. Yeah, 10,000. I think that's okay, but it wouldn't be bad if a 9K golfer won this again. Looking at top 5, your average salary is 8,900. Top 10, it's 8,500, and what that should tell you, looking at this top 10 number, is that I just want to double check. Yeah. When DraftKings only allows you 8,300 a player to build your lineups with, anything above 8,300 when doing these salary summaries, basically, tells us that the cream rises to the top. Your best golfers do well at this tournament. If this was lower than 8,300, it would be saying leave money on the table. Also, be more comfortable playing lower price guys. Here, I would say, invest in your high price guys. Start up top and then work your way low. Instead of like going right to the 8K range or the 9. Well, it would be okay doing 9K range. But either way, seeing this number, 8,500, that's pretty surprising. And then top 20, 7,900. I've seen this as low as 7,300. For those golf tournaments, it means volatility happens, right? Where there's more 6 and 7K guys inside the top 20 than there are 9, 8, 10K guys. But on average, there are more totals of golfers in those 6 and 7K ranges anyways, that it would be highly unlikely to see more 7 or more 10, 11 or 9, 10, 11K golfers. But here's where we can also see a little bit better of a breakdown. So in those 2 years, 2019, 2018, we've seen 4 total golfers 11K and above. 50% reach the top 10, but 0% have hit the top 5. So what that kind of tells me is 11K and above might be a little off limits. Maybe we should, halt the brakes on choosing someone who's 11K. Looking at 10 to 11K golfers, we have 6 total. 33% make the top 5, the 33% make top 10. I mean, it's the same number because it's just those 33%. And really, I think obviously 2 out of 6 is 33%. We see those two right here. They finished 6th place in 2019. It doesn't happen every year. No. My bad. That's 11K top 10. Here we go. We're looking right there. My bad. So we see those 10K golfers 4th and 5th place in 2018. But still, same thing kind of applies, right? If it's not 10K guys, maybe it's 11K guys. And again, don't feel afraid of using anybody 10K and above. I think that's where we need to start our lineups. 11-5 and 11-1, or just 11-5 and 11. This isn't going to do it. This is borderline okay. But we actually just it might benefit us more to start here. I would say this. If I'm starting, how I'm going to create my lineups is 30% of them will be searching for a 10K golfer. And then the remaining 60-70% will be starting in the 9K range and going from there. But I do think it's beneficial starting in the 10K range, and we can look at some of these optimal lineups pretty soon. But yeah, you can see the rest of how the percentages work out. You know, anything in the 7 to 6K range, usually, I mean, the highest I've ever seen top 10 percentage would be, again, this is how often this range has finished inside the top 10, which obviously is never going to be really higher than 10, but I've seen this as high as 12. So this is basically saying, yes, you want 6K golfers or 7K golfers and 6K golfers in your lineups, but good luck choosing the right one. It's a dart throw. This is where the ultimate lottery ticket is won. You need to find the correct 6K golfer. But let's go ahead and take a look at optimal lineups. So every year I typically try to figure out what the optimal lineup is. Unfortunately, it wasn't until like 2019 that I actually included DraftKings points to give you guys, validation where you guys can read what the DraftKings points are. Here in 2018, I'm not sure if I just looked at who I could fit inside the top 10, but typically to get an optimal lineup, you want all 6 of your golfers inside the top 10. Very rarely, but it has happened where 5 guys inside the top 10. Let's put it this way. You could roster 6 guys inside the top 10, but there was a guy outside the top 10 that scored more than that 6th guy. So that is a possibility and that can happen, but you typically want to choose it. You want to have 6 of your golfers inside the top 10 to win a GPP. So that's kind of what I have for the optimal lineup. When we look at the optimal lineup for 2018, we see that it used 48,900. And it consisted of a 9K, well, actually 2 9K golfers, a 7-7, a 7-4, a 7-7, so 3 7K guys, and then a 6K golfer. Now we can see some 10K golfers here. And I mean, what we could probably do is remove Tiger and put in, can't do that, but we could put in Justin Rose if we wanted. So we could do a 10K, a 9K, 3 7s, and a 6. That would work. The $3 birdie winning lineup, that GPP, had a 9-8, a 9-5, a 7-7, a 6-8, an 8-5, and a 7-7. So it wasn't very balanced. But you still had, 2 7K guys, 2 9K guys, and an 8K guy, 8K golfer, and a 6K golfer. Man, can't talk. We could almost make the argument that Paul Casey is so close to 10K, we can consider that 10K, but obviously we can't. But that type of makeup happens quite a bit in these GPP winning lineups and these optimal lineups. If we take a look at 2019, what the optimal lineup was, and unfortunately I didn't enter a high price GPP. This is obviously the winner take all $1 lineup. But when we look at the optimal lineup, it used 49,300, and we had a 9K. Actually, again, we had 2 9K golfers, an 8K, a 7K, 6K, and a 7K golfer. So again, we had that 6K guy, 2 7Ks, but this time we had an 8 and 2 9s. So 2 years in a row, we've seen 2 9s, an 8. Oh, we didn't see an 8. 2 9s, 2 7s, and 1 6. And then obviously the 2-year difference was one was an 8K golfer in there and another one was a 7K golfer. But again, we did see a 6K, 2 7s, and 2 9s. That $1 winning lineup I do have highlighted in blue. So we have a 9, 8, 7, 8, 8, 7. So a very balanced lineup. And then obviously, you know me, I like to try to create anything that's, you know, a more realistic lineup. But I don't think we can get there looking at this. Yeah, this is 51,000. So we couldn't do anything with an 11K guy. This was definitely 2 9Ks. So although I was saying earlier, we want to find, you know, a 10, 9, 8, 2 7s, and a 6. You know, that is basically your general lineup build just based off a salary alone without looking at any golfers. That's kind of how you want to get to. But it looks like for this, or, you know, this tournament, 2 9s, 2 7s, a 6, and then fill in the rest with either an 8 or a 7. Again, I'm still going to go with the 30% of my lineups are going to be 10, 9, 8, 2 7s, and a 6. The other 6 will start with 2 9K golfers, I think. And that's just based off a salary. Maybe when I look at the golfers, it won't be that way, but I think that's where I'm going to start. Let's go ahead and jump right into the bucket system. Now, usually, or I shouldn't say usually, I've started doing this where we look at the summary page that I've created for the bucket system. Just an easier way for you guys to see it and perhaps understand it. But before it was very convoluted. I was just going through each bucket for top 5, top 10, top 20, but I do have them all here kind of in an easier way to read. Let's go ahead and break this down into each one. Now, we're not going to be covering last year buckets, but we can go ahead and talk about last week buckets. Now, the only thing, and again, this is just talking about, you know, what type of finish from last week is more important. That's what the last week buckets entail. Do we see, you know, better finishes from guys who finished top 10, top 20, or how about missed cuts? Does that hurt anyone's value? These are things that some of you guys or some of us DFS players, we kind of like, if someone misses the cut from the week before, you kind of either have one of two mindsets, right? Like, oh, this guy's due. He's going to, you know, come back and be stronger. Or, yeah, I'm not going to play him until I see some success. Well, looking at last week buckets, it's not biased. It's just looking at whatever finish they had, throwing them into any of these buckets based off of what that range is. So obviously you can see last week bucket 2 is in that 1 to 20 range. So anybody who finished top 20 fits in this bucket. And then obviously it's ranked based off of how frequent we've seen it from 2013 to 2020. So it's just a way to get you guys, or just to get all of us to understand, you know, which types of finishes we should stay away from and what type of finishes we should, you know, try to stick to. So one way to look at this, I usually kind of like to start here. I like to look at the success rate. Now these numbers, the ranks, are based off of the totals that we see here. This is the frequency that's happened. So how many times have we seen this between 2013 and 2020? You can see what those numbers are here. That's what it's ranked out of. Now, that's all great and dandy, but how many golfers do we typically see in these buckets every single year? That's what I have here. This is my average per year, and then you can see what is in the field for this year. And basically what I like to do is kind of compare, look at the differences, and try to determine what matters and what doesn't. Here is the interesting thing. Last week was a team event, meaning, and actually those entities, those teams were considered one entity. They were one player. They weren't two separate players. They were one player. So all of their finishing positions are as one. All the birdies that were made were as one. It's not, we can't really use birdies, eagles. We can't really use any of the stats we saw last week. And it's kind of difficult also to look at, last week's performance. But I do think it's going to help some of those guys out, who either played well or who played poorly. So I think we can still look at these buckets and be confident in playing some of these guys. So here's my thing. Because it was a team event, I am kind of inclined to divide these numbers by 2. Especially when I see what the averages were per year. I think that's okay to do that. Now, we see absolutely 0 golfers in these 2 buckets here. So there's no reason to even look at these 2 buckets. But for the rest, the other ones, 28, we see 28 golfers that have a finishing position from last week between 1 and 20. That makes sense, right? Because if you were to divide this into 2, that's 14. Now, obviously, 14 would finish inside the top 20 any given year, obviously. That makes sense, right? The math plays out. So I'm kind of inclined to think that this is actually 14. I want to divide this by 2, and this is 14. So we are pretty much on course for this exact same, I don't know what to call it, number. I'm at a loss of words. Here, we are a little bit lower. If we were to divide that by 2, that equals 10. Obviously, divide that by 2, we're at 14. So it kind of matches these numbers, sort of. This number divided in half, now we have more. But, oh man, I don't know. It's difficult. I don't know how to look at it. But if we were to times the success rate by how many guys are in this bucket, that's what we get with this projected column, which I kind of showcased last week. So I think we're going to see somewhere between, I would say somewhere between 3 and 4 guys that are going to be in this last week 2 column inside the top 10. We'll see around 3 guys in this last week 3 column, 4, and I would say 4 in the did not play. Which is kind of interesting because I think those numbers all together equals 15. So maybe we see 15. I don't know. We'll see. But let's go. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys who those golfers are. If I were to go to last week right here and sort from top to bottom, we can see all the guys that finished inside the top 20 from last week. There's quite a bit of them. I also have this. Let's see. What do we want to see here? Okay. I can also go by courses or last week bucket. So if we wanted to look at all the last week bucket 2 guys, we're going to see 4 from here is my guess. And that's probably not difficult to get to. There are a lot of good golfers here. So if I were to actually go sort by salary, I've got 3 guys in the 9K range. So if you wanted to start with any of these guys, I think that's probably a good idea. We see some 8K guys, which is okay. Again, when we look at salaries, yeah, one of the years with optimal lineups, we had an 8K guy, but we're probably more or less making our money somewhere in here with the 7K guys. I'd say pick somewhere between 1 to 3 guys from here that will finish inside the top 10. So that's my idea of how this is going to work. We can go ahead and take a look at last week bucket 3 guys. I believe, right? Yeah. So this is that 20 to 40 range. This was also 4 if we were to look. Actually, no, this was 3. So we're going to want to find 3 guys out of this range. Now, Victor Hovland's at $10,000. Now, there's a possibility Victor Hovland could finish inside the top 10. I think this is a golf course that would work for him, but I think I'll probably pass on that. But we can see a couple 8K guys, only one 7K guy, and a couple, well, a good bunch of 6K guys that I would not mind playing whatsoever. So maybe this is where we can find our 6K golfer, but also maybe this gives us a good idea of what guys to, choose from 7K, 8K, or 10K. I mean, it's in your the ball's in your guys' court. I think you should, well, just consider it. Let's put it that way. We already looked at last week 2s. Let's go ahead and look at last week 5s, because 1s are those that did not play. So these are all your missed cuts. And if we were looking at our missed cuts, we're going to see we're going to forecast 4 golfers from this bucket that are going to finish inside the top 10. Sung Jae is our only 9K guy. I like Sung Jae this week. He was unfortunately paired with Byung-Hun An in the team event, and Benny Ann just has not been playing the greatest golf as of late. This missed cut is probably just as much his fault than anyone's on the team. So I would not be discouraged seeing this. Likewise, we see Cameron Tringali, an 8K golfer. Maybe our 8K comes from here. A pretty good amount of 7K golfers. We can look at the other buckets to see if any of those match up, but these guys wouldn't be bad as our 7K guys. And maybe you want to select one from each. That's not a bad strategy either. And then some decent 6K golfers. But again, we can kind of go into some of the other buckets to see if we can find any of these. Maybe we can see crossovers or those that overlap. Let's go ahead and go back into our bucket summary. Let's go ahead and look at course history. Now, the fun thing about looking at course history buckets is that instead of telling you this is a golf course where course history matters, like meaning the best course history matters, I can actually give you numbers as to whether or not you should choose golfers based off of their course history or not. So when we look at this, again, we have our frequency and our ranking is based off that frequency. But let's look at our success rate. And I'm thinking about changing the ranking for the buckets. So again, how this reads is course history bucket 4 are golfers who fall in this range for course history. So if they have a course history under 20, that means their average finishing position is 20 or below. They fit in this bucket. Again, I'm thinking about changing what the rank goes by for success rate because I think it's probably easier. When we look at average per year versus, what we have in the field this year, we can see we're a little bit low on this course history bucket 4. It is our highest success rate at 18%. If we, multiply 18% by 6, we're going to get 1.08 as our projected amount of golfers that come out of this bucket. And you can see how the other ones rank as well. We'll see, I have 12 golfers that might finish inside the top 10 just by looking at these numbers. If any of these numbers on the right side for this year are higher than the average, I usually like to say the frequency that we're going to see, golfers out of the bucket that is higher for this year compared to average, it's going to be higher. I don't know if that made sense, but just put it simply, course history 1, typically we see, a minimum of 1, a max of 4. We're probably going to see that again. If we were to go ahead and take a look at this bucket, since this is lower, we might not see that great of success, but let's go ahead and take a look. This has an 18% success rate of finishing inside the top 10. This is looking at all golfers from 2013 to 2020 that fall under this bucket. What is their success rate of finishing inside the top 10? 18%. Again, 1. So if we go ahead and grab everybody and take a look at our course history bucket 4 golfers, right? I think that's correct. We're going to see 6 of them in the field. And if we go to course history, we can see they all have a course history better than 20. These all could be individual performances, by the way, where they only played one event. Like they only played this tournament once, and this is where they're getting their course history from. That's a possibility. I guess what I could do is show you that from here. So everyone that is in the field right now, so our 6 golfers right here, let's see, 3, 6, yep. You can see each one of them has just one event played that makes up that course history. But still, I don't have those stats for you to say, everyone else that's finished inside the top 10 has also had just one finish. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. So don't get too caught up on that. But out of these 6 guys, choose one. I mean, some of these guys are easy to pick from, right? Wes Bryan might be the hardest one at 6,400. Keith Mitchell at 7,000 also might be a little difficult. That leaves us, if we wanted to make 4 lineups and anchor each one, let's say no. If we were making 100 lineups, we could split them into fourths. So 25 of them could have Denny in it, 25 could have Sung Jae, 25 could have Abe Answer, and 25 could have Dustin Johnson. That is a very doable way of making lineups, and I don't hate it. But again, we have 6. They all have only played this event once. So take that with a grain of sand, or perhaps use it as your anchor position. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Now, we really don't have a bucket that has a high success rate. If we were looking at like top 5 finishes, or even top 20, or even cut made frequency, perhaps we want to choose, well, this starts to fall a little flat when we move over. It does have a nice top 5 frequency. So those that have a missed cut, or let's say an 80th place finish as your average finishing position, which is usually a missed cut, but sometimes we might see a guy who actually just has an 80th overall average that also fits in this. And I think that's Kyle Stanley this year. But let's go ahead and look. We have 25 in the field this year. Usually on average, we see 25. Perhaps we can find an easy pick from this. So we'll look at course history 2s. I do want to, we'll keep it by salary like this. So yeah, Tyrrell Hatton, 9,400, a good 9K guy. And if we're checking this again, we're projected to see 2.3 golfers from this bucket. Again, the bucket is 25 golfers deep. So if you see 2 guys on the screen that you like, go ahead and choose them. I think it's a decent play. So yeah, we have Tyrrell Hatton, 9,400. I like that. Emiliano Grillo, I like that, 8,300. Max Homa at 81, and Taylor Gooch at 8,000. So those are our 8K golfers and 9K golfer. We do have 3 that are in the 7K range. And again, it's just 3. So it's probably, if we wanted to choose from this group as our 7K guys, it's not a terrible way to start. And then we can see some of our 6K golfers. I did think we were going to see Kyle Stanley. I must have misremembered that. Oh, Kevin Chappell was actually the guy that has the 80.5. You can see he's the only guy that is not an 85 or a 90, meaning this actually is worse than the rest of these guys, in my opinion. Having 80.5 means you had a 70th place finish and probably a missed cut. It's a 60th place finish and a missed cut, most likely. So yeah, if you liked anyone there, obviously it's a good way to start as well. Don't really see a very good success rate when it comes to top 5 frequencies or top 20 frequencies. The course history bucket 4, what we just looked at with DJ in it, with Sung Jae in it, that looked to be our best bucket to choose from. I really don't have anything else to go by. Maybe we should look at this one. It is our 6th ranked bucket just because of the frequency. We haven't seen it that much, but we are projected to see nearly 2, and it might be an easier one to select from. So let's go ahead and look. Yeah, okay, so this one has JT in it, Patrick Reed, Paul Casey. I think we'll see at least 2 guys out of that bucket show up inside the top 10. But it does give you a little bit more difficult choices. Now, this is where I would say we have 24 in that bucket this year. Typically, we see 17 on average. Having 7 more golfers is going to boost the success rate to me. So I think we're going to see somewhere between 2 and 3. I think I'd project more around 3 than I would 2. And it could be these 3 guys up top. So maybe it's a good reason to anchor with these guys. It's totally up to you guys. I'm not going to. I do like Paul Casey, but it's not enough to get me on Paul Casey. I also like Joaquin Niemann. He's the only 9K golfer from this range. A ton of 8K golfers. Perhaps we see someone from here finish inside the top 10. But, I mean, if we see 4, it's just going to be, who do you like best? And we'll get into that tomorrow with the strategy video, but just giving you guys some options here. Let's go ahead and move to the last piece we're going to talk about, recent form. Now, we have a high success rate here as well with a bucket that is better than average. We have 5 golfers in this recent form bucket 4. Again, it's ranked that way because of the frequencies we've seen in the other buckets, but it has the highest success rate, followed by that recent form 20 to 40, which that's pretty surprising. Definitely one we're going to be looking at these 2 buckets. So let's go ahead and look at this recent form 4. We're only going to see 5 golfers out of this, so it's going to be a little bit easier to select from when it comes to picking golfers from this bucket. So Patrick Reed, we obviously just saw him in the last course history bucket. That would be a play. We also saw Ryan Palmer. Maybe that's a reason to play one of these 2 guys. But we do have a 9K golfer. Corey Connors has been getting a lot of attention from everyone in the DFS industry, and rightfully so. Like, Corey Connors is a good golfer. Charlie Hoffman shows up, and then Peter Uihlein, who had a very good finish last week in the team event. They all show up, or they all are in contention for that top 10 position. Now, if we look at that summary, we're projected around 1.3. So I think selecting one of these guys as your anchor spots would be pretty good. And if you wanted to use Ryan Palmer, he fits that course history bucket 6 that we just looked at, as well as that recent form 4. So that's one way to look at it as well. He is also my 5th ranked golfer in the field, and he's only 8,500. And Patrick Reed's number 4. So take that for what it's worth. Let's go ahead and look at that last bucket. I think it was just recent form bucket 2. Let's double check here. 27 we have in that bucket, 17.6% success rate. On average, we see 21 in this bucket. So I think this 4.75, we could actually see 5 golfers from this bucket, I think, show up inside the top 10. And it's littered. I mean, it's a good reason to play Justin Thomas or Paul Casey. This is the first time we saw Scotty Scheffler, so this would be a good reason to play him as well. Louis Oosthuizen, Abe Ancer, Joaquin Niemann, and Russell Henley, all in that 9K range. Again, I think it's worth it to start your lineups choosing 2 9K golfers. Maybe it's one of these guys, and then pair them up with, say, Corey Connors that we just looked at in the last recent form bucket. I really like Russell Henley, but again, I'm going to save my picks for tomorrow in the strategy video, who I like the most. We have a ton of 8K guys, but like I said, we can choose 5 from this bucket, so don't be stingy with some of these guys. Like, you could choose 5 and put them in a lineup right now, and it would be a pretty decent lineup. But remember, when we look at these buckets, although it says 5, we could have the very good possibility that these 4 show up inside the top 10. And yeah, you could play Louis and you could play Scotty together, and that would be really good. But if JT wins this tournament, you're probably not winning a GPP without having JT in it. And so these 3 guys would almost be unplayable, meaning everyone else in this bucket, if we do see 5, you would have to choose 1 from the remaining guys. And let's say, what if it's a Brandt Snedeker? There are a lot of good plays, Abraham Ancer, Joaquin Niemann, Russell Henley, that I know you're going to want to play. But again, it could be these 4, and we can't roster all of them. They're too expensive. That's one of those things that I've learned going through this bucket system is, yeah, we could play them, but these guys are too expensive. We can't play all of them. But yeah, I'd say choose 5. The summary says choose 4, but we obviously have way more in the bucket this year than we do typical years. I don't think I want to talk about any of the other buckets, just because the success rate isn't that great. The bucket number itself isn't that good. This is recent form, so I'm more concerned about these 3 buckets than any of the other ones. Has a higher success rate of top 10 finishes, top 5 finishes, even top 20. You can see that those 3 buckets much better than the ones below it. And then I know you can't really see the cut made frequency, but 74% for the one that we looked at. So even if you choose the wrong guy, chances of him making, if you did choose the wrong guy, the success rate to make the cut is pretty high for those 5 golfers we just talked about. So do not be concerned with really selecting any of these guys. And if we were to put like a percentage on it, out of these 5, it's probably going to be these 4 golfers. This is 80% of this bucket. You know, maybe 3. So like, I think it's probably easy to say Peter Uline's not going to make the cut. You know, he's had a good run here recently, but I probably would choose these guys up here over him. So yeah, that would be it for the bucket system. I don't think I want to discuss anything more. We'll go a little bit more into this tomorrow during the strategy video, but the last thing I want to talk about is usually when it comes to the preview video, I want to give you guys basically the best information I can, and part of that's going to be talking about grass stats. So let's go ahead and look at that. Your best golfers in the field, and I don't know why I keep having this here. The best golfer in the field for overall Bermuda stats is, believe it or not, a Koepka, but not the Brooks kind. It is his brother Chase. Chase has a 19th average finishing position on Bermuda events. He's only played 3 events. That makes 33% of his events inside the top 10. Now in 2021, his average finishing position is 30th, so take it with a grain of salt. Actually, I believe this stat actually includes his Zurich Classic from 2 years ago when he played with Brooks. I think they finished inside the top 10, so that's probably an unfair depiction of his Bermuda stats. But moving on from there, Dustin Johnson has the best overall Bermuda average, followed by Scotty Scheffler. JT's up there, Sungjae Im, Victor Hovland. You can see the rest of the guys here. I suggest just screenshotting this or pausing the video to see the rest of the guys. Let's see what the percentage is, the best top 10 percentage. So basically the success rate of finishing inside the top 10. JT has a 42% success rate finishing inside the top 10. DJ's right behind him at 41, followed by Justin Rose, who's kind of made a little bit of a resurgence over the last couple weeks. Masters had a top 10 finish. He was basically single-handedly helping him in his partner out, Henrik Stenson, in the team event. They were leading that tournament for a while. So Justin Rose is playing some good golf right now. $8,800, that's not terrible, especially with that type of success rate. We see Chase Koepka up there, but I'm not too concerned. And then Sungjae Im, Kevin Kisner, Patrick Reed, Louis Oosthuizen. You can see the rest of the guys. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let's look at those that actually have less than 5%. That's kind of my rule, is don't play golfers that have less than 5% when it comes to top 10 Bermuda percentage. So their success rate finishing inside the top 10. I will ignore guys who have less than 4 events, but Erik van Rooyen is not one of them. I can't see playing him. He has some good bucket marks here, but not a very good overall Bermuda average. Definitely not this year, so I'm probably going to avoid playing Erik van Rooyen. Rasmus Højgaard, though, on the other hand, 2 events under his belt, a 52 average finishing position. That all comes from this year. I'm not too concerned here. I will say, I feel like Euro Tour players they take a little bit longer to get accustomed to Bermuda stats or Bermuda golf courses, because I don't think they play many Bermuda golf courses overseas. I think this is mostly a United States type of thing, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you guys that do look at Euro Tour a lot, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of them. Doug Ghim. Last week, he finished top 10 with the team event with Justin Suh. No, he didn't finish top 10. He finished 11th. So yeah, he didn't even get top 10 with the team event. Doug Ghim's not good on Bermuda stats. And I did not include Bermuda or the team event from this last year. I realize that's probably not a good tournament to include, because you could get lifted by your partner quite a bit. Doug Ghim has not shown very good success on Bermuda golf courses, so I'm not going to play much Doug Ghim. And obviously, Matthew Neesmith is another notable guy. Danny Willett is another notable. I'm not going to talk about any of these 6K golfers. Scrolling down a little bit, everyone else is a 6K golfer. So I think those are the only golfers to really talk about. I think it's pretty fair to say we're not going to see many of these guys sniff in the top 10. At least not when Sunday comes around. So I know Doug Gim was talked a lot throughout the industry. Here's a good reason not to play him. And you're obviously only getting it here. But I think I probably would avoid playing Doug Gim. Although strokes gain bucket, which we'll talk about tomorrow, he is a 1. So that's not a terrible play altogether. Is there anything else to discuss? I don't think so. So we'll wrap it up there. I don't have a giveaway this week. I don't have anything else to talk about. So I guess I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I'll see you in the strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.